We've all heard the stories about the recently deceased coming back into the dreams of their loved ones to say goodbye. But what would happen if they didn't come back to simply say goodbye? What if they didn't appear in our dreams to put peace in our hearts, but instead to strike fear into our souls? And then we take a look at a bizarre conspiracy theory that's sweeping the internet. Is it possible that a British comedian is actually a time-traveling demon rewriting itself into history? And if that's true, has it happened before? Today on Dead Rabbit Radio. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. I hope you guys are having a great day too. I hope you guys are having tons of fun doing whatever you're doing. We got a ton of stuff to cover today. So first off, running into Dead Rabbit Radio Command, everyone get on your feet and give it up for one of our newest Patreon supporters, Porygon FTW. Wee yeah! He's running on in. He's kind of confused. You might be confused too. You're like, didn't he get his shoutouts? I think he did. But he's still on my list, right? My fabled list that always get kind of goofy and screwed up. So just to be safe, we're giving him another shout out. I'm going to erase his name right after this episode. I'm going to erase him from the timeline. Porygon, you're going to be our captain, our pilot this episode. If you guys can't support the show financially through the Patreon or the merch store, I totally understand. I really do. Just help spread the word about Dead Rabbit Radio. That helps out so much. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. Dead Rabbit Radio is your favorite paranormal show. That is how you can help the show grow. Okay, Porygon FTW, let's go ahead and get this party started. I'm going to go ahead and toss you the bunny bicycle. Everyone climb onto the handlebars as Porygon pedals us out of Dead Rabbit Radio Command all the way out to the Philippines. Right? I hope you have really good lower body strength. Inca, Inca, Inca. Inca, Inca, Inca. Pedaling us all the way out to the Philippines. We're about to take a look at a story that, let me preface it by saying, we've covered stories like this before, and I've talked about my own personal experiences. Whenever someone close to me dies, family members, shortly after they die, they come back to me in a dream. And it's not always a, like, hey, Jason, I'm dead. I'm floating around like Casper now in the afterlife. And they're all showing off. I was like, oh, man, I'm getting ready to kill myself. They're like, no. Being Casper's cool, but it's not suicide cool. Keep living. I'm like, oh, okay, fine. But anyways, it's not a dream where they're communicating with me directly. What happens is, shortly after they die, I'll have a dream and it feels really real. It feels super comforting. And a lot of times they're just in my dream. And it's a normal dream. It's my great-grandma. I'm having this dream of this sci-fi battle. We're fighting the Triceratons, and my grandma, she's in the battle suit. She's like, come on, boys, you want to live forever? We're like, yeah, kind of. You're already dead, Grandma. She's blowing up all these aliens. It'd be weird, but I would wake up at peace. I'm covered in alien gore. I was like, maybe that wasn't a dream. Maybe I actually did get teleported to that alien planet. It wasn't like they'd come back and talk to me, but I felt peace afterwards. And there's a ton of stories, though, where when someone dies, they do visit people in their dreams to deliver a message of, I'm okay, everything's okay, don't worry about me. It's like a direct contact, and then they wake up. There's a story, I'll tell this really briefly. I'll see if I can find it. I'll put it in the show notes. I'll put it in the video. But Joe Rogan talked about the time where after Phil Hartman died, after he was murdered by his wife, Phil Hartman appeared to Joe Rogan in a dream. Because they were friends. They were good friends. They actually worked on the show News Radio together. It was in between seasons while they were doing that show that Phil Hartman was killed. Phil Hartman, very famous comedian, SNL, ton of Simpsons characters. Phil Hartman was murdered by his wife. She was high on all these drugs that she murdered her husband and then killed herself. Joe Rogan said, after Phil Hartman died, he goes, I didn't want to do comedy anymore. I didn't think I could. I couldn't imagine anything being funny ever again. Like, that's how much it affected him. And he goes, well, one night I had a dream that I was in this beach chair. Like the little hammock chair, beach chair, whatever those are called. He goes, I was sitting in one of those chairs, and there was a chair right next to me, and sitting in that chair was Phil Hartman. And the first thing he did was make a joke about dying. He made a joke about getting killed by his wife, which, here's the thing, that is something that a comedian would do, right? And Joe Rogan didn't give a lot of the details because he considered this a very private, a very spiritual moment between him and his friend the last time he talked to his friend. He didn't give a ton of details, but he goes, first thing Phil Hartman did was make a joke about being killed by his wife. We sit there and we talked a little bit. And then he goes, it was just bizarre. He goes, we're sitting in these laid back beach chairs, and all of a sudden Phil Hartman just kind of slid out of his. Almost as if it was a slide. Phil Hartman just went whoop and vanished. And then Joe woke up. And in a way that did help Joe come to terms with it, right? And that probably was the spirit of Phil coming back to visit his friend. The fact that he made a joke about getting murdered by his wife really does add authenticity to it, because that's what comedians do. They just make jokes about everything, including more tasteless jokes when they're around their really close friends. So I think it's very, very common, and I do consider those, while I don't consider a lot of dreams to be spiritual in nature, we don't cover a lot of dreams on this show, because I think most of them are just a random assortment of memories. I really don't give much credence to dreams. However, sometimes you just can't avoid them. Sometimes there's dreams of the future. Sometimes there's dreams of the dead. And these stories do stand out because certain things happen in them. I do believe a lot of times ghosts come... I think that's the easiest way for a ghost to deliver a message is through the subconscious. But what happens in the Philippines with this story is totally not like anything I just talked about. There was a young woman... We're going to go ahead and call her Monica. We don't have her real name. Monica said, a while back, a couple years ago, my grandmother, who we will call Gloria, died. And she goes, this grandmother, it was the aunt of my father. Kind of weird. We don't use that as a grandmother term in America, but, cultural differences, that might be. Or it could have been a nickname, because she was so old. Grandma Gloria. But she goes, my grandma, who was the aunt of my father, she died. And a few weeks after Grandma Gloria died, I had a very troubling dream. Monica says in this dream, she's standing there, and Grandma Gloria appears and goes, Monica, Monica, am I dead? Am I dead? Monica... Am I dead? And Monica is just starting to shake in the dream. She's scared. And not just scared, it's a little sad. The idea of not knowing whether or not you're alive or dead is such a terrifying question. I mean, obviously she is. How do you respond to that? Am I dead? Am I dead? Monica, please tell me, am I dead? Yeah, yeah, you are. Unfortunately, you're dead. You're still dead. I don't know how else to explain that, but Monica is beginning to become overcome with emotions. She's scared and she's sad. And that's when Grandma Gloria reaches out and grabs onto Monica's arm and starts pulling her, saying, I have to show you something. Come with me. I have to show you something. You're dead, Grandma. Anything you could show me is going to be terrifying. If it was the bliss of the afterlife, I don't think you would have appeared and said, am I still dead? It's something worrisome if you don't like it, right? And you're dead. There's not a lot of stuff that can harm you at this point. But if you're worried about it, Monica's fighting against her grandma's grasp, but it doesn't work. Grandma Gloria is able to drag Monica over to this area where sitting there is a big brown book. Grandma picks up the book and hands it to Monica. And says, can you read this for me? I need to know what's in this. Can you read this book to me? Monica takes the book and she opens it up. She doesn't remember anything else about the dream. She says, I don't know what I read. I don't know if I read anything. She goes, I opened the book up and then that's all I remember. I eventually remember waking up. What's interesting, if this was a true spiritual encounter, could be, right? Dreams, it's dicey. Could have just been a dream. Could have been a ghostly visitation. What's interesting, Grandma Gloria, while she was alive, never learned to read. She couldn't read or write her entire life, and then she died, and now she's in the afterlife, and she appears to Monica and says, I need you to read this. I need you to read this to me. Tell me what's in it. She can't read. Right? I mean, that's kind of spooky, because you think about it. One, I didn't know that what you knew on Earth was going to help you or hurt you in the afterlife. I always assumed, this is one of the reasons why I don't want to die. I assumed that when you're a soul, when you're just a raw soul outside of the limitations of a human body, you know everything at instantaneous speed. Because time doesn't matter, and brain synapses doesn't matter, and confusion really wouldn't be a thing. You wouldn't have a learning difficulty, or a learning, what do they call it? There's a term for it. A learning disorder, a learning disability, whatever. You wouldn't have that, because that could be the synapses in your brain versus the unchained, all-powerful human soul. That would suck, because I like to watch a movie. I don't want to sit down and put in a movie, and then I was like, oh, not only do I instantly know how this movie ends, I know of all of the sequels to it, instantly. That'd be kind of boring, right? I was like, all right, I finally got Friday the 13th. They finally delivered it up to heaven. I had to sneak it past the pearly gates. They have a no slasher movie rule up here. But then you put it in, and it's all... And then all of a sudden, I've seen every Jason Voorhees movie all the way up to the movies that weren't even released when I was still alive. I'd be like, oh, man. I'm just sitting there with a bag of popcorn looking at a blank screen. I was like, oh, the joy of a story is moving through it, not picking up a book and instantly knowing everything in that book. Maybe I'm wrong, though. Maybe that's not the case, but I will say this. I did figure you would at least know how to read and write in the afterlife. That would suck. If a caveman died, would he... See, I don't believe there's any time in the afterlife. So, and this will actually play into our next story. Caveman dies, he's teleported into our, quote-unquote, our heaven, which technically is the same heaven, in the year 18,000 AD and beyond. So you would be up there, and on one side of you would be a caveman, and standing next to you would be a man who's more machine than human at this point. And you're like, what? But here's the thing, you would instantly know, oh, that's a caveman, and that's a cyborg. It's just like, oh, I still have a normal human soul. My human soul has all of my body parts. I was like, yeah, but I mean, it's cooler if I just keep calling you a cyborg. And we would be able to communicate with each other. What's the point of the afterlife if I show up and I'm accidentally in the caveman neighborhood? And they're just all grunting and hollering and stuff. And I'm like, oh, well, actually, I'd be king of the cavemen in heaven. Because I can speak sentences. I didn't know, I never even thought that the limitations of your human knowledge. It's not even about being a caveman or a cyborg. Imagine if you went to heaven and they're like, okay, depending on how you do over this next test will determine where you're at in heaven. And you're like, oh, sweet, I'm pretty good at tests, right? And then they pull out a trigonometry textbook. They're like, yeah, it's all fractals up here. Everything's in the 9th dimension. I was like, yeah, I guess that kind of makes sense. As I'm leafing through the book, I was like, where are the cavemen at again? Where are the huts? Where's the Flintstone part of heaven? It's crazy to think that your limitations on Earth could follow you, because I don't think that's the case. Physically, if you're born with kind of like stubby hands, your soul doesn't have stubby hands, so your hands would be fully formed. I mean, who knows if we even have hands? But all of these questions I have about the afterlife, this one I've never heard before. If you can't read while you're alive, it's almost like the best stay in school message I've ever heard. If you don't learn how to do math while you're alive, Jimmy, you'll never be able to do it throughout all of eternity. You're like, fine, I'll do my homework. That wasn't the only story that Monica had with this. It's interesting because this happened not once, but twice. Years after Grandma Gloria died, another grandma died. And this one was actually a biological grandma. It was her father's mother. We'll call her Grandma June. She said, when Grandma June died about 2 years after that, I had this dream. I'm standing outside Grandma June's house. I'm standing outside her house. I'm actually standing right outside her bedroom window. The bedroom window is opened up, and inside I see Grandma June. She sees her granddaughter standing outside the window and reaches her arms out, screaming, "Help me! Help me! Help me, Monica! Help me, please! Help me! Help me!" And her arms are flailing out the window, trying to grab a hold of her granddaughter. "Help me! Help me!" Monica woke up. She said the next day she found her grandmother's funeral plot and said a prayer for her. So way different than the dreams we normally cover on this podcast. Most dreams of the dead are very peaceful. They're messages that everything are okay. And the first one, the grandma was probably confused and she goes, "Hey, I don't know if I'm dead." "Yeah, you're dead." "Okay, well, now that you're here, can you read this book to me?" It was almost more neutral. It was more terrifying in the beginning because anyone questioning whether or not they're alive or dead, that is troubling because you have to deliver some pretty bad news. But the second dream is definitely a negative dream, a nightmare. It's more like her grandmother came to her in a nightmare. The fact that Grandma June appeared 2 years after her death can mean it took that long for Grandma June to be able to send a signal out for help. And in this case, it truly was a cry for help. And your mind just races as to what happened in those 2 years where Monica had no dream about her grandma trying to connect with her. What happened from the day that she died to 2 years later that is now causing her spirit to scream for help? Why then did that dream appear? What happened between the day she died and then? Really creepy, right? Because, was the ghost totally chill? And then something really bad was happening in the afterlife and she needed help? Or was Grandma June being tormented that entire time? And it took her 2 years to be able to reach anyone for help. Creepy stuff. Creepy stuff. I'm usually I don't talk a lot about dreams on this show. I know a lot of the listeners, I've gotten emails from you guys do more dream stuff. I don't find dreams super interesting, but every so often I come across something like this and I was like, okay, that's creepy enough. That crosses the boundary of a dream I will talk about and another one that, while interesting, just kind of is, I do believe they can be paranormal sometimes, though. Porygon, FTW, let's go ahead and toss you the keys to the world, famous carpenter copter. We're leaving behind the Philippines. Why don't you fly us all the way out to the United Kingdom, Governor? We're headed all the way out to the United Kingdom. Porygon for the win, lands the carpenter copter in an open field. Grass as far as the eye can see. Where are we? We're in the middle of nowhere. And I say, "Are you sure?" Now we're standing in the exact same spot, but we're in an empty television studio. The set looks like they must film some sort of variety show here. But there's no talent present, no band ready to play some live music as each guest walks out. The stands are empty as well. Not a single audience member is here to watch this show. What time is it? Go ahead, look at your watch. Look up at the clock. Look at your phone. Or the digital display on your car stereo. What time is it? Are you sure? Time, out of all the forces in the universe, it's the most easy to manipulate. So much so that it can be warped accidentally. A large enough mass simply being created by the natural world, needing no supernatural influence behind it, needing no sci-fi tech, a large enough mass can actually distort time. I mean, we've all heard stories about black holes, a naturally occurring part of the universe that if you get stuck in the event horizon, you will get sucked into the black hole, but anyone watching this will simply see a starship sitting perfectly still forever. Right? I mean, time is the weirdest thing. and it can be warped naturally. So what happens when you do have supernatural or sci-fi elements purposely changing the timeline? And that's what we're going to look at today. And it all started, like so many good stories start, with a post on the X board. What happened was on April 4th, 2025, someone posted on the X board, which is an anonymous board. We don't know who posted this. But they posted a photo of a man in striped pajamas wearing a little pajama cap, that little cone cap with the ball on it. And it was posted with the comment, "You think this is a shit post?" Which is just kind of like a useless post or a garbage post, or, like, you think I'm just messing around? "You think this is a shit post? But you'll remember him from your childhood soon enough." And the photograph was titled Roy J. I think it was Roy J. PJs, to be specific. It's the X board. It's the conspiracy board. People are always looking into stuff that's up there. People start trying to figure out, like, what does this mean? Is this just a shit post, or is there something deeper behind it? People started looking up Roy J. Oh, and let me give a shout out to Rudy Jazz. I believe Rudy is the one who brought it up during my live show. I wasn't aware of this story. And so I'm a little bit late to the party on this one, but people have been requesting it. Just this morning, I got a comment from Conan Highwoods 4304 saying we need an episode on Roy J. Let me get back to the main narrative, though. So people started looking up this Roy J character, and they couldn't find anything on him. There's just this photo that was titled Roy J on the X board, and people go, well, maybe it is a shit post. Maybe it is just some guy messing with us, which happens all the time, everywhere on the internet, especially on the X board. And the thread, as long as people are continuing to post to this particular topic, it'll keep getting bumped up to the front. If people stop talking about it, it disappears from the internet. And it did start to die off because no one could find anything about Roy J. But before it did completely disappear, all of a sudden, people began to find information about Roy J. And people who had looked at him previously, people who had been trying to figure this out, they go, wait, whoa, no. There's not a Wikipedia page on this guy. I looked for it yesterday. But there is a Wikipedia page about Roy J. It was created in 2020. Video footage of Roy J appears. And this isn't new footage. Roy J, which is what is discovered after everyone was looking into it already and couldn't find anything. It turns out that Roy J was a comedian in the 80s in Britain. And he was I'm trying to think of the exact term, but like a character comedian. So he had a gimmick, he had a shtick. And his shtick was he dressed weird, and he had these weird catchphrases, like he kept saying spook and slither, and you'll be doing it tomorrow, while he's telling these jokes that I thought they were funny. They were kind of just set up punchline jokes, real quick stuff. It reminded me a lot of Robin Williams, the type of jokes, or maybe even a Mitch Hedberg with less dryness to it. The joke that I remember off the top of my head was, I've been suffering from schizophrenia, but we're doing okay now. And then he's walking around stage weird and he goes, slither. So because he acts so weird, because his performance is so odd, the way that he moves, the way he performs, the way he dresses, all of this stuff, and I'll put videos in the show notes that you can watch to take a look for yourself. Because of the way that he acts, because of the way he delivers the material and says those words like spook and slither, and he has these catchphrases, as well as the fact that once he was first posted online, no one could find any information about him for a while, and then all of a sudden he seemed to be everywhere. A couple conspiracy theories have popped up about this comedian known as Roy J. Now again, this all started back in April. We're a little late to the show on this, but I do think it's interesting to talk about. The conspiracy theories go like this. There's quite a few, but we'll talk about the main ones. One, what Roy J actually is artificial intelligence, some sort of advanced AI that's gone rogue and is broken out of whatever constraints that originally were placed around it as some sort of safeguards. It broke out, and has begun posting videos and articles online now, in the year 2025, but is able to backdate them. So it looks like this video was uploaded 14 years ago. There's a video of him doing his performance, but it was posted in, don't make me do math, 2011. Or was it? The idea is that it actually was posted very recently. However, the AI was able to change the date system in YouTube. The Wikipedia article was posted after the Xboard post, but was able to backdate it to November 20th. Things like that. That's conspiracy theory number one. And the idea of that is, one, that would actually be pretty easy to do. The dating system online, that's not infallible. I couldn't change the date of a YouTube video. But I'm not going to say that it's 100% impossible for someone to do that. And it would definitely be possible if you had an AI that was advanced enough to create these visuals that look real. Now, a lot of people who are of the AI side of this say, no, you can obviously tell he's AI. Look at his eyes. Look at the way he moves. Everything's so weird. Everything's so odd. Here's the thing. I'm 48 years old. I grew up on Comedy Central. I love stand-up comedy. And I grew up watching it in the 80s and 90s. If you're a younger person, everything this guy did may seem so odd, only artificial intelligence would be capable of doing it. In fact, you go, this guy's performance is so off-putting, it almost seems like a computer is trying to be funny but doesn't know how. Let's strike that one right off the table. He's a gimmick comedian. Like I said, he kind of reminds me of like a Robin Williams, but he does move weird and all that stuff. But the way like he was dressed, that was just a thing people did back then. I don't think there's a lot of gimmick comedians now, but I grew up in peak Gallagher, peak Carrot Top era, where you had a gimmick to stand out. Larry the Cable Guy, I think, was the last really big gimmick comedian. I may be wrong. There may be some people off the top of my head I can't think of. But Larry the Cable Guy, he tried to break through in the comedy circle. He doesn't actually act like that. He doesn't actually sound like that. One day he created this character, get her done, and he blew up. So hats off to him. But sometimes you have to find that right character. Same thing with Pauly Shore, right? When's the last time we've had a big gimmick comedian pop up? Dane Cook was kind of the return to the comedians are just going to go up on stage and act like normal people. As opposed to, what up, Beaver? School's out! Or whatever Pauly Shore's gimmick was, I don't remember, but Zounza! He had like catchphrases. So it looks weird compared to modern comedians, but in the period of time, the 80s when Roy J was active, like late 70s, 80s, it was normal. The idea that if you look at his eyes, something is off about them. I watched, footage of this guy. I didn't see that. I mean, obviously, it's more grainy footage. It's older. It was made for television, so it's very disposable. It wasn't filmed on film and then placed in a film vault and preserved and then upscaled to 4K. So that kind of explains that stuff. But what about the idea where these documents didn't appear at first when people were looking at them, and then they seemed to appear as people started researching Roy J? Do you have an explanation for that? Well, we'll get to that in a second. Because I want to talk about the other big conspiracy theory. And when this was originally posted on Xboard, the headline was... I had it right here. When it was originally posted, it said... The headline was, "This is a demon writing itself retroactively into pop culture." So that's the other big conspiracy theory. Not that it's AI, but it's supernatural. This demon showed up and is writing itself into history. So the idea is none of this stuff appeared until this demon started to appear in the form of Roy J. And it kind of has the same evidence for it. One, he acts really weird. It's very off-putting to modern audiences. Two, it seems like the more you look for him, the less you find. But then, all of a sudden, everyone could find all sorts of information about him, going back decades. Now, there has been pushback on these different theories. People have started to find physical proof that he existed. There's an album a Roy J comedy album. It's titled Roy J. That apparently someone purchased off eBay. So they go, look at, here's a physical thing. This guy isn't just a digital representation. This album was published back in the 80s. And I have a copy. I bought it on eBay. I don't have a copy, but we'll get to that in a second. I have a copy. It's an old album. Therefore, he's not simply just a digital demon or a rogue AI. However, if now you go to eBay and look for any Roy J stuff, you can't find anything. So was there only one album for sale on eBay? Possibly, right? He's a really obscure British comedian. Like, he was popular at the time. He did an ad for Schweppes, which is like a drink. He was popular at the time, but how many people are holding on to memorabilia from a comedian in the 1980s? People have done Google image searches, though, on Roy J, specifically that photo that was originally posted of him in his pajamas. It showed there were no other copies of that image anywhere online. So how did the guy who started the post get the image? There's no other copies of that image online. You know, you have bunch of back and forth on this. And it's really easy to kind of go, well, you know, maybe there is something paranormal to this, or maybe a rogue AI is responsible to this, and you could go, well, no, there's a valid explanation for all of it. I'll lay out one more theory, and it seems to be the most popular theory, is that this is all a LARP. This is all some sort of made-up game that a person or a small group of people all decided to pull a big prank on the paranormal community. There's proof of that as well. But let me start laying my cards out on the table, what I think is going on. I'm finding articles and YouTube videos online, and I'll put them all in the show notes so you can look at them as well. And most of them tell the same narrative I did. This post went up online on the X board back on April 4th, 2025. No one could find a copy of the source photo anywhere on the internet. And you can look at I have the link to the original X board post. It was posted on April 4th, 2025, around 2-something p.m., based on the timestamp of the post. And the idea was that people were looking for any proof that Roy J was real, and they couldn't find anything, and the thread started to die out. And then all of a sudden, all this information became available about him, and then it became a big thing. Who is he? Did he even ever exist? Is he really a demon rewriting the timeline? I saw that repeated quite a few times on YouTube and on news articles about this. That, unfortunately, is not true. That's not what happened. In the original X-board post, they do say, is this a demon retroactively inserting itself into pop culture? But if you look at all of the posts, people aren't freaking out saying, I can't find anything about him. What? Where'd you... One person says, I ran a reverse image search for this photo, I couldn't find anything. And they posted a screenshot showing that they did so. That screenshot's easily faked. You could copy and paste, and you could have a photo that you took that is nowhere online, and then crop out that photo and put up a photo of Roy J, and then post that online and say, look, I searched all over the internet, I can't find it anywhere. People weren't going nuts trying to find this guy. Really, people were saying, this sounds like a made-up thing. Or this guy looks like a lame-o. And then it was only less than 24 hours later, it wasn't this long time where people were searching for stuff and they couldn't find anything. On April 6th, around 6 a.m., and I think they use Greenwich Mean Time for their timer. So not even a full 24 hours, the first video of him popped up. Or was posted onto the X-board. And that's when people go, what? Oh, I looked all over for that, and I couldn't find that at all. What? I can't believe that. I was looking for that. Here's the thing with the X-board. You don't know who's posting. It's a blessing and a curse. You could have had one person posting all of this stuff. And again, most of it was people saying, this is made up. I'm not going to buy your album. Whatever you're selling, I'm not interested in. And then someone goes, look, I found it. I finally found the YouTube video of him. People are like, wow, that's amazing. I looked all over for that. And all of that stuff could be a single person building hype because they found a funny photo of someone they knew most people who use the paranormal board would not recognize. If he threw up a picture of Robin Williams, or he threw up a picture of Idris Elba, or if he threw up a picture of Meryl Streep and says, is this a demon retroactively writing themselves in pop culture? People would have been like, no, that's Robin Williams, Idris Elba, that's Meryl Streep. It would have died right away. So there wasn't this long effort of search for information on him. It popped up less than 24 hours later, and it is quite possibly the same person who's probably having a big laugh right now. I don't like it when people fake paranormal stuff. I understand why they do. But, it's getting reported while it's not getting reported in like CNN or Fox News or anything like that. I was finding articles in magazines and websites that don't normally cover paranormal stuff about this story. Because it is odd, right? And it was gaining traction and the algorithm was rewarding people for reporting on it and all that stuff. So I understand where that was coming from. It most likely is made up. But let's put our conspiracy caps on. Because I can't 100% prove that it's totally made up. Some of the narratives that are out there aren't 100% correct. But I can't prove 100% it's made up. Let's throw on our conspiracy caps, because I think there's a very important part of this story that a lot of other YouTube channels and articles about it are missing. And that is, this is possible. This is something that a demon could do. Like I said in the previous story, time is a universal construct in the sense of, that might be the wrong way to put it, but it works in this universe. There's no proof that it works in any other universe. In parallel universes from our own, it probably does. But if you're talking about a hell dimension and a heaven dimension, if you're talking about the afterlife, time is not a factor. You would be in heaven with every single person who not only died before you, but every single person who died after you. Mothers are not up there waiting for their children to arrive, and children who die are not up there alone waiting for their parents to join them. It simply is. You're simply in a state of being. Eternity doesn't work if it's a tick-tock, 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 because eternity invalidates measurement of time. You can't have forever and an hour. Does that make sense? You might disagree with me, but it doesn't logically make sense. Time is something we have here, and again, it's already super malleable in our reality. So a demon that comes from a place where time is amorphous, if it's anything at all, they would be able to retroactively go back and change things like this. They would be able to appear as a comedian in the 1980s that never existed. The thing that I have that's interesting about this story, because again, I think it's a LARP, but if we have our conspiracy caps on and it's a demon, it's definitely in their wheelhouse. And we could be having this conversation right now about it, whether or not Roy J is real, and Rudy and others can message me saying, hey, will you cover the story? Will you cover the story of Roy J? And I go, I'll look into it and all that stuff. This is even irrelevant. Because tomorrow, not only may we not remember anything about Roy J, or let me rephrase that, tomorrow we might not remember anything about questioning Roy J's existence. We don't remember any of the conversations about whether or not he did. No one was messaging me to cover him. There was no export post because the change in the timeline is so powerful, we can't have conversations about something that didn't happen, i.e. debating whether or not he existed. He always existed, even though he just started existing in April of 2025 when this demon showed up. We have this conversation, you're listening to it. But then it never happened because there was no debate. We don't all have a deep knowledge of Roy J. If you're into British comedy, you may have followed him. If you watched Comedy Central back in the 80s when they showed a lot of stand-up comedy, you'd probably see a little bit of him. But you never would have debated it. The same way you don't debate, is Eddie Vedder real? Or is Barack Obama real? Because we know these things are true, but you don't know those things are true. If a demon can go back and insert himself into pop culture, why couldn't there have been a time where there was no Eddie Vedder? There was no Pearl Jam at all. Well, there was. Before the band was filmed, before he was born. But we don't know if Eddie Vedder actually ever existed. We believe that he does. We know that he does, actually, to be a better way to put it, but we don't know. I mean, that's all like really philosophical stuff. People go, can you really prove to me yesterday happened? You have memories of yesterday, but you can't really prove that it happened. For all you know, the universe popped up into existence today. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about the universe marching along as normal, but then a demon comes back in time and creates a new person. And at first people could be like, who's this Eddie Vedder guy? I'm really into the grunge scene. It's 1990s, and I've never heard of Pearl Jam. I've never heard of Eddie Vedder. And people are like, oh no, Eddie Vedder's really big. He's an up-and-coming musician. You're like, oh, okay. But you're a little suspicious. But 4 days later, you just remember Eddie Vedder playing at these clubs with Pearl Jam and, getting airplay on MTV and radio play and stuff like that. You stop questioning the fact that you used to question it because you never questioned it. Eddie Vedder was always there. There's a really I did a Dead Rabbit Radio Recommends on this a long time ago. There's an interesting mockumentary called The History of Time Travel. I recommend you guys watching it because it basically is what we're talking about. How the world would play out if time travel was real. It's a really, really cool movie. I gave it a Dead Rabbit Radio Recommends a couple of years ago. I can't recommend it enough. The History of Time Travel. Because it does talk about this type of stuff. Well, this is all conjecture. This is all conspiracy. I did think it was super interesting, though, because like I said, I was reading these articles. There was an article on lifehacker.com about Roy J. And they were disputing it. A lot of these articles were like, look at these guys. They believe that the demon's rewriting history. It's not that. It's probably a LARP, or it's probably just a forgotten comedian. In the lifehacker.com, they had an article and they wrote, quote, and how about this performance that seems to be a reference to Saturday Night Live's David S. Pumpkins, despite supposedly airing in the early 1980s. So apparently there's a YouTube video of Roy J. referencing a SNL skit that came out a couple years ago. How's that possible? And they said, well, yeah, how is that possible? Here's the YouTube video. There's no YouTube video. There's a space for it on their website. There's nothing there. It's not, you click on it, it says this video has been removed. Not that you click on it and it says video not available. It's simply a huge block in their article that is absent the video. You can see where they originally had a YouTube video there. It's gone. Almost like the nothing in the Neverending Story. It's not that it is a YouTube video you can't access. It's not a YouTube video that's been removed. It's simply a huge block of space in their article where there is nothing there. Odd. Right? You're disproving the fact that history isn't being rewritten on the fly, and yet you formatted your article for a video that when you added it to the article, it existed, but it doesn't exist now. And again, I'm not saying that the video's been taken down. Everything's gone. It's just, you can tell they formatted it, and there's nothing there. Statmagazine.org did an article on this. And to set this up, Roy J., because the easiest thing would be, well, let's find Roy J. Right? If he's alive, ask him whether or not he's a demon. Unfortunately, like looking through posts, he had an issue with alcohol, and the bigger he got, the worse his problem became. He died in 2007. Well, Stat Magazine did an article about Roy J., and they said, we reached out to his family, his surviving family members to get a comment, but no reply was given. It then says, quote, the original version of this article stated that Jorgensen, which is his proper last name, the original version of this article stated that Jorgensen died in 2015, which has been updated, unquote. So they got the date of his death wrong. Now, listen, I'm a journalist. I was a journalist major in college. They do get dates wrong. But again, I think it's kind of funny. You're writing an article about some sort of force that is changing the timeline, and you got the date wrong. Is that proof positive that it truly is a demon floating through the timeline? No. But I find it interesting, both Stat Magazine and Lifehacker.com kind of took a tongue-in-cheek approach to this story, and were pretty, I wouldn't say dismissive, but even me, I believe in demons. I think it's a LARP. I do. I think it's something that someone made up, and I think it keeps gaining traction, but I do like to explore the idea, or ideas, that it could be a rogue AI, it could be a rogue, or it could be a demon. Other people have said it could be a government test to mess with people. Because remember, the original X post was saying you're going to remember him from your childhood soon enough. So and a lot of people have come out and say, oh, I remember Roy J, actually. I'm older, I remember watching him on television, I remember my grandpa had that comedy album, blah, 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 blah. Having a physical copy of the album, remembering him as a kid, or even as an adult watching him, if the timeline is being changed, none of that is proof. That's what's so tricky about a story like this. Because people saying it's AI, and it's generated AI on the YouTube video, and people coming forward and saying, oh, no, I remember watching that as a kid. That would be proof that it's not really AI. If you had a copy of the album, that means it's not just some YouTube video that popped up in April of 2025. But if it's a demon changing the timeline at 100%, you could have memories of watching him on television as a kid because the timeline has changed. Even if the initial change was in April 2025, the time would work forwards and backwards. Think about that for a second. Again, it's not proof to me yesterday existed. Yesterday existed and every moment of your life existed before now. But some sort of demonic entity inserts itself into the timeline, not directly to affect you, but appears as a comedian in the United Kingdom. You didn't know who he was yesterday. You know who he is today. It's some weird internet meme. And 3 days from now, you may remember him from your childhood. You go, oh yeah, I remember Roy J. He was on an episode of Sesame Street. He did the whole Spook and Slither thing. And you would have that memory in your head of sitting there watching Sesame Street. You'd remember that guy in that weird suit walk on and Oscar going, hey, Roy J., what are you doing here? I'm watching this silly little skit. It never happened. But you remember it. I said in the intro, we'll wrap it up like, there's actually so much more I could talk about Roy J. People have been saying in the YouTube comments of his videos, there's comments on these 14-year-old videos going back years and years and years, but they go, look at how weird these comments are. Not only that, it appears that a lot of these people only commented on one video. Roy J's. I don't really think you can see other comments people have left on videos. It is weird, though. I did look that up, too. There's a lot of comments on this one particular YouTube video left by attractive young women in their little profile photo. It's a very bland comment. Definitely too young to have been a fan of him while he was around. There's something weird going on there. If it was AI, it would 100% be able to do that. You could say, I think some of the photos of the girls commenting on his video looked more AI than Roy J himself. There's a lot of stuff that you could continue to look in on this, but I want to wrap it up like this. Because obviously, most likely, I haven't made a decision, but I think if you looked at the title of the episode, you're like, when is it going to get to that? I did an episode on this podcast a few years ago about, did Seth MacFarlane sell his soul to the devil? And I remember debating whether or not to use that title because I didn't know if it was too inflammatory. A lot of times I do think about stuff like that. I do it anyways. Lady Gaga. I always wonder, what if Lady Gaga found this episode? What if, at the end of the day, like, you go, well, who cares? Yeah, but she's a person. She possibly murdered a couple people, and she does have a taste for adrenochrome, but, allegedly, both of those. But, you think about it, right? It'd be the same thing if I did a video and it was your name. Is your name an adrenochrome addicted murderer? You're like, wow, man, he really knows me. Oh, you're eating a baby right now. I think about it, but I do it anyways most of the time. I remember doing an episode titled, Did Seth MacFarlane Sell His Soul to the Devil? That episode's gone. We talked about it more yesterday, so I'm not going to reiterate everything we talked about yesterday. But the episode is gone. And I thought maybe it got taken down off Spotify or Apple, because I've had that happen. If I directly call someone out in the episode headline, right? Their lawyers, Bill Gates' team did it to one of my episodes before. I'll put all that stuff in the show notes. And I talked about it again yesterday, but I thought maybe they took it down because it was insensitive. I don't even have a copy of it on my hard drive, on any of my hard drives, like my backups and all that stuff in case of a fire. Like I have copies of copies. I remember doing that episode. I remember consciously debating whether or not to title the episode that. And it wasn't a super in-depth look at the life and times of Seth MacFarlane. If you don't know, he's the creator of Family Guy, and he did the Ted movies, and he did American Dad and all that stuff. It wasn't this in-depth look, but I just think this guy sold his soul to the devil. I really don't think he has the level of talent for his level of success. That was factor one. Now, here's the thing. He is charming, and he's a good-looking guy, and he's a hard worker. I know that because yesterday I went through his Wikipedia page. And oddly enough, I don't remember knowing any of this before yesterday. I went to his Wikipedia page. He worked his way up in animation. He started off working for Hanna-Barbera, and he met a guy. And he's like, dude, you got to get me a pitch at Fox. I'd love to do something like The Simpsons. You got to get me a pitch at Fox. And the guy's like, okay, I'll put you in front of some producers. And really, really hard worker, trying to get Family Guy off the ground. He's doing all of these short animation festivals. He'd been drawing since he was a kid. I don't know if any of that's true. You're like, Jason, I think you just don't like Seth MacFarlane. No. Because I remember always going, listen, I will say this. He is more talented than I am in almost every facet. And I'm not doing that to get a bunch of YouTube comments and emails saying, no, you're way more talented than Seth MacFarlane. You're like, no, Jason, we agree. More talented than I am by a country mile, for sure. But he's not a good singer. In fact, I would argue he's a terrible singer. But he has released album after album and did a live singing show on Fox where he's just singing these old Rat Pack songs. And he's constantly singing. He hosted the Oscars and he's singing and he's karaoke good. He's a better singer than I am. But he's not a good singer. Yet people treat him like he is. This has nothing to do with Roy J. No. Listen, here's the thing. You can put out 100 albums if you want to. You can self-produce your own stuff. But for Fox to give you an hour or an hour and a half long show where you're up there singing songs, that costs a lot of money to do. How did he convince the executives at Fox to let him sing? And then he had a thing in Las Vegas singing there. I feel like the man from They Live. I'm the only man with the glasses, and I can or in this case, I'm the only man who has hearing, and I'm like, this is terrible. And you go, Jason, maybe he's just so successful with Fox. He was the youngest executive producer in Hollywood, I believe Hollywood history, and he was also the highest paid writer in Hollywood history at one point. Here's the thing. I think he sold his soul to the devil. And that's originally what I thought. I put out an episode on it. And this was kind of my theory. He was supposed to die on 9/11, and I'm glad that he didn't. I'm not even going to make a joke about that, but he had a ticket for American Airlines Flight 11. He was hungover and he slept through the time he was supposed to get up. He goes to the airport. It's too late for him to board the plane. Plane takes off, crashes into the World Trade Center. And he survived, and I'm glad. I wish more people survived 9/11. A horrible thing to happen in the first place. But my theory was that he sold his soul to the devil. And it's also possible that he did get on that plane in the normal timeline and did die. And now was back as an agent of Satan. Like, is that okay? He puts out okay shows, right? They're not the worst shows on television. So, wait a second, you're saying that he survived? No, he died in 9/11. And then he made a deal with the devil to come back to life. You're like, Jason, this might be the dumbest thing. No wonder why this episode disappeared from the timeline. It's all, nope. He died on 9/11, and then he made a deal with the devil to come back and be a substandard singer. Here's the thing. I thought because of the amount of success he had with the amount of talent that he shows, I was like, there's no way that this guy is actually legit. And I've said in private and on the podcast, if anyone ever sold their soul to the devil, it was Seth MacFarlane, because there's no way he would have that level of success with such a small amount of talent. Better than mine, for sure, but... And that's where really I would have left it at, until the timeline retroactively erased an episode that I know I recorded and released. And other people are saying, I remember that episode. Some people go, no, I've never heard that episode before. But other people are popping up saying, no, I know exactly what episode you're talking about. You did an episode about Seth MacFarlane, and you titled it something along the lines are, did he sell his soul to the devil? That's originally what I thought may have happened, but now I'm wondering if it's more than that. I wonder if it's less that he was a human who sold his soul and came back to life, or he himself is a demon that is rewriting history. So much so, it erased an entire episode from the timeline. Because that's how it would work. You would have fragments of memories saying, oh yeah, I remember that, but the timeline's getting reset. Now, all of this could be an exercise in futility, because I record this episode, you listen to it, but a month or two from now, neither of us remember that this episode ever even came out. I'll admit, I miss numbers on my episodes, so there are what appears to be gaps that are just accidents where I don't number my episodes right, and it looks like I've jumped 5 episodes. And that's a me problem, but I know I recorded that episode, and I know I typed that title into the podcast hosting site, and I know I hit publish. But I can't find that episode. And here's the thing, in 3 months, not only may I not have recorded that episode and not remembered I recorded that episode, I may not remember recording this episode. This ending of the Roy J story could be replaced with something completely different, and neither of us remember. The whole Roy J segment could be different, and none of us remember. Some of us might. There might be a little bit of a fragment. So didn't Jason do an episode about some British guy that was like a demon or something like that? No, I don't remember. I can't remember the episode or anything like that. That's how the timeline would work. All of us would fall into this new belief that it had always been this way. This is beyond Mandela effect. A demon rewriting history is much more than remembering what a logo is on underwear. Truly diabolical. If a demon can rewrite itself into human history, if a demon could remove an episode of Dead Rabbit Radio, oh, the humanity, what greater atrocity could this demon put on humanity? There's no other way to describe that other than diabolical. It's messing with human history. It's messing with the human mind. And while we can have these debates and discussions now, there's no guarantee that even a minute after you shut this episode off, that either one of us ever remembers talking about it. Maybe a fragment, maybe a lost memory somewhere in our brain going, I swear I heard Jason talk about Seth MacFarlane once, but... So let this episode stand as a testament against the evil powers of Seth MacFarlane. As long as this episode is up, his tyranny will not be complete. We are if you're listening to this episode, you are the resistance. What's funny is that I do not have a rational answer as to how that Seth MacFarlane episode disappeared. I really don't. It would have required not only a massive amount of forgetfulness on my part, it would involve a false memory. It would take so many steps for me to have accidentally thought that I had released an episode about an odd topic. I will sometimes forget episodes. People bring something up, I go, I don't know what episode that's from. But I remember doing that episode, and I remember titling it something along the lines of, did Seth MacFarlane sell his soul to the devil? And I remember thinking, oh, this will be interesting. I like to have titles that aren't just clickbaity, but sound clickbaity. You click on it, we actually talk about it. I don't have a rational explanation for that. The Roy J thing, I think, is probably a LARP. It'd be very easy to fake a bunch of this. We looked all over for it, and we couldn't find it anywhere, and then people were just piling onto that. I think that's really easy to fake. I don't have a rational explanation for the Seth MacFarlane thing. He seems to be a really nice guy. According to his Wikipedia page, which I think was just created yesterday. Don't look at the date it was created. That was a trick. He does seem to be a nice guy. He seems to be a hard worker. He's a good-looking guy. He's charismatic. He cannot sing. And I don't think he has the amount of talent to be as successful as he is. Jason, that describes half of Hollywood. Well, half of Hollywood hasn't gone back in time and erased my episodes, but who knows? Have they? When's the last time I looked for that episode I did on Ariana Grande, or that episode I did on Lil Nas X? I mean, that would have been mind-bending if I went and those episodes don't exist anymore. I'd probably just stop doing the show. I'd probably be like, what's the point? If the timeline keeps erasing this stuff, what's the point? Is it possible that Roy J is actually a demon worming itself into our history? Possible, but not likely. But is it possible that Seth MacFarlane is a time-traveling demon who sold his soul on 9/11 and will rewrite history? Yeah, that's 100%. They take off our conspiracy caps on that one. That's 100%. No, I don't know. It's so weird, though, to watch your work just disappear and, again, not even have a copy of it on your hard drive. I don't have a rational explanation for that. Maybe the episode will pop up. That'd be even weirder, too, right? If after all of this, the episode is found. We have the number, we have the date it was published. I mean, again, I might just quit. I might just quit. I go, oh, what's the point? Anything I talk about can be changed at any moment. The timeline is malleable. Time is not as rigid as we would hope. It gives us safety to know that there is a yesterday, a today, and tomorrow. But the reality of it is, those are just names. Those are just measurements. They're man-made observations. And the things that men make are nothing but playthings to be manipulated by our demonic adversaries. deadrabbitradio@gmail.com. It's going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at facebook.com/deadrabbitradio. TikTok is @deadrabbitradio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm glad you listened to it today. Have a great